Hello and welcome to the Human-ish podcast. Now, for the following video, I will not be interviewing a guest. Rather, I am going to be talking about a new idea, I suppose. It's new to me, at least. New articulation of idea. Let's call it that. Regarding movement. Okay. Now, if we extend this idea, it doesn't purely exist to movement, but it extends to everything, which is the idea behind this podcast. But yeah, let's go about it. So I call this intent, right? And pertaining to movement, we're calling the intent of movement. Okay. Now, let me just get a few things up. Now, where have we heard intent before? Okay. Now, for any martial art fans there are, Bruce Lee, right, in Enter the Dragon, when he's training his little student Lao, what does he tell him? Tells him to strike with emotional content, right? And then he strikes, and then he's angry, and he says, "I said emotional content, not anger. Now strike again." Right? And then what happens? He strikes, and Bruce Lee's like, "Oh, there you go, good. How did that feel?" Starts looking at his fist. And then Bruce Lee smacks him on the back of the head, right? And then there's a little spiel about how when you look at the moon and its beauty, you look at the moon, you don't look at everything else, whatever, right? But the point there is emotional content. Okay, now, for me, as a sort of 13-year-old that just gotten into Bruce Lee and, his philosophy and his martial arts and whatnot, that didn't make any sense to me. Right, and I attempted to make sense out of it, and I was like, well, emotional content, maybe, martial arts is an art, and you've got to express what you're feeling when you punch, and if you're happy, bang, it comes out one way, if you're angry, bang, it goes out the other way. I tried to do that, but the thing is, Bruce Lee said to his student, not anger, right? So then, you got to go, well, why not anger? What's so special about anger? Then you could pass through the different emotions that are good for martial arts and bad for martial arts and whatever, right? But the point is, that's a red herring. Okay, we're not talking about emotions. So I'm not particularly fond of the term emotional content. Okay, because when we're talking about martial arts and we're talking about something like entering the flow state when you're fighting, you're not talking about emotions there. You're talking about a specific state of mind. Okay? Now, Miyamoto Musashi, the samurai who wrote the Book of Five Rings, talks about the way. Right? He also talks about empty mind. There's a Japanese term for that, and I always get them mixed up. So we've got empty mind, we've got the way. Right, but the way is all-encompassing. It doesn't talk about movement specifically. Empty mind is a specific mental state where your mind has nothing else on it besides what is in the moment right now, right? There's none of that rubbish, none of those preconceived notions, none of those predictions. You're just there reacting to the moment, okay? That's what empty mind is. It's the flow state that people talk about. Again, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about intent. Okay? Intent. Right? You intend to do something. Okay, now why is this important? Well, again, let's continue with the martial arts example, okay? And then afterwards we can extend it to whatever else there is. Okay, so with the martial arts example, martial arts now, right, MMA now, or in the past few years, right, MMA is a relatively new phenomenon, has introduced strength and conditioning, okay, and studies with biomechanics, okay. Now, with strength and conditioning and this newfound love for athleticism that we didn't really have hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago when martial arts began, okay, the martial arts world is shot up, right? We have athletes that are fighting now, as opposed to martial artists that do a bit of fitness. Okay, we have athletes that fight, right? Athletes can learn new movements quickly, are more explosive, more mobile, and all that jazz, and they train efficiently, right? So strength and conditioning is a fantastic addition to martial arts. Okay, biomechanics are also a fantastic addition, right? This breakdown of how the human body works and the most efficient way to execute a movement, right? So when we talk about a kinetic chain, right? A kinetic chain is this. So obviously you can't see my feet, but my foot is on the ground, right? And my punch starts all the way from my foot, links with my knee, my hip, my shoulder, boom. And then it extends, bang, right? It's not just my arm going, it's everything going in one successive motion, right? It's supposed to be fluid. Now, biomechanics gives us an understanding of that. Okay, biomechanics tells us, okay, that each part is linked, right? And we can look at the specifics, okay, of how. But the point is, they are, okay? If you're interested in sort of how cross-body motions link into each other, you can search up the Sarape effect, okay? So that's that, right? We've got biomechanics, we've got strength and conditioning, and they've added to martial arts a huge amount, okay? Now, you can have the perfect strength and conditioning program. You can have a perfect, well, okay, for the purposes of this video, you can have a near perfect understanding of the technique, right? But I am arguing that that's not enough to master a technique. Let me give you an example, okay? So let's talk about boxing. Yeah, boxing, you got a jab, right? Now, when you jab, what is there? Well, you got to have strong hips, you got to have strong legs, you got to have a strong arm, right? So you can generate and transmit all that force, okay? There's your strength and conditioning. Then you've got to perfect the technique, right? So the technique is you rotate your foot, your hip rotates, right? Rotating your hip, send your shoulder forward, and you transmit and lock out with your arm, and you bring it back, right? It's on a straight line. So you can spend hours and hours and hours perfecting this technique because you understand the theory, right? We could do a little video on how to do a jab, right? And then you could perfect that, and you could get every step in the video correct, but you're missing one thing. What? You gotta punch someone in the face, man. You gotta punch them. They gotta feel it. Okay, so if you're there theorizing and cognizing and, you know, dropping on like, oh man, my hip's off by 2 degrees, so I need to, you know, work on my hip rotation a bit more. You could do all that, and that's great. But if you forget the fundamental part of what you are doing, what makes a punch is the fact that you're hitting someone, right? The intent behind the movement is striking. You are hitting someone, right? When I punch, I can think about the fact that my foot's connected to the ground and this is happening, and I can do this for days on end and hours on end. I can do my whole 10,000 hours of mastery, but if I do not have in my head that I'm punching someone in the face, what the hell am I doing? Right, see, the intent of the movement is to strike. What makes a punch is the fact that you intend to deal damage to somebody, right? If this is not there, if you do not embody this principle, you're not punching, right? You might as well be doing a dance move, right? You could probably play like it could be a dance move, right? Or a sort of better example is boxercise, right? What is boxercise? Boxercise is punching without intent. Okay, that's what it is. You're punching for the fitness. You're not punching to deal damage. You're not punching to perfect the art of striking, right? You just, yeah, get fit. That's what you're doing. Okay, so there's no intent there. Now this extends to everything, right? And an overarching movement principle is to understand the intent behind what you are doing. Otherwise, you cannot embody it. The emotional, when Bruce Lee tells the kid, right, to punch with emotional content, he's telling him to understand that you're doing this to strike. Embody the fact that you are striking, right? What brings together all the movement and the technique that you're doing is the fact that you intend to strike somebody. If you are dancing, you intend to express an emotion or a set of emotions or a story. Right? If you're doing parkour and you're doing a precision jump, you intend to get from one point to the other, right? And if you're like, and stay there, right? Be precise with your movement. It's in the name, precision jump. Okay, if you don't have that in your head, it's just jumping around, right? You will never truly maximize your body's potential to be as precise as it can be, because you don't have that belief in mind, right? Your mental models, your intent is a mental model, right? Mental models shape action, right? Now, if you don't have this mental model, you're not maximizing your capacity for your brain to shape your body's action, right? You are not maximizing your brain's capacity to shape your body's action. So we've got examples of how it extends towards movement disciplines, and I've sort of laid out why intent is important for a punch, right? It's the fundamental nature of the movement. If you don't have that, nothing else exists. It's not a punch, it's just a movement, right? And then the expression and the perfecting the expression of this intent is the goal of whatever movement discipline you're in. In martial arts, you're perfecting the intention to end the fight, right? That's the overarching goal of a martial artist. When you're in a fight, end it, win, right? All the different techniques are just different sort of arrows in your quiver. Yeah, I don't believe there's much more to be said. Intent is the fundamental nature of a movement.